Let's round off this week's worth of material by looking at the worksheet. Okay, so the worksheet simply asks you to complete and test the calculator object, not the static class, is the object you are interested in from the previous material. It's reasonably straightforward. You know, if you follow the lecture notes, you will have already created a multiply, add a subtract, test it out, but also add in an area of circle. It gives you the specification of what we want and the distance between points, passing it to 4 points essentially from the end of 4 parameters, one each corresponding to the x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, so they're reasonably straightforward. You can test that out. The next two exercises ask you to create, now this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. 4 is a nice challenge because it asks you to create a second add, and what you're passing it is an array. Okay, now how do you pass an array to a function? So let's have a very quick glance at that. Okay, so if I come over here, I've got an add. It's only accepting single values in this version. In order to define one, and let's say that I'm going to return I create an add, and this is an overload. Because it has different parameters, I'm allowed to do it. Just pass it an array, use the data type, square brackets, and you can say, I don't know, values, right? Give it name you like. When you come in here, then you have access to an array called double values, and we'll come back to what you'll do with it in a second. So you can define that in your main, pass that as a parameter to your add, and then really essentially what you want to do, you want to create a loop, right? And inside your loop, and I'm not going to spell it out too much, you're going to iterate through every item using the indexes of that. Now, if you forget what an index is, go back to week 3 for it, okay? And then you're going to return from here the sum of all the numbers. So you're going to literally go through it one by one to add them together. And that's what I want you to do here, okay? You've got 2 examples to test it against, not to write 2 separate functions. Do the same thing with a multiply. Pass it an array as a parameter, loop through it, multiply it. These numbers, I'm hoping I'm going to shrink them down a bit because I don't want it to burst the boundaries of the double. Although it does have precision, it's better to use slightly smaller numbers. So let's just shrink these numbers down a bit, 5.78 and 9. Okay, so there's those 2 exercises. And this final exercise is a challenge. Can you create an overload, i.e. an overload add function that has 2 arrays as parameter? Each array holds xy pair, so you're basically handing in 2 points. Okay, that's not going to be graded. Okay, so when you come to doing these, that's just a challenge for you to explore and test yourself out on.